Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 3 interview. Today on the show we have Adam Reed. Hello, Mr. Reed. How are you today?
I'm very well. It's a pleasure to be here.
That's good. Our pleasure to have you on the show. So today we're going to be talking about interviews in general. So people going for a TAFE interview, uni interview, if they're going to an interview at workplace. So the first thing people need when they go for an interview is correct attire. So what attire would you recommend for a general interview?
I think in any kind of interview process or any kind of job interview, I think you need to look the part.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure a suit is always good. You don't have to necessarily wear a tie, but to go in there and show some effort that you want the job and you care for the position. You may not wear a suit or pants in the profession, but if you look the part, it shows that you've gone that extra mile.
Yeah. So smart casual look, you'd say. Yeah. And when going for an interview, what questions could one ask? What questions seem reasonable for someone to ask so they're not coming off as rude?
Well, the main focus when you go for any interview is confidence.
Yeah.
So people are looking for interpersonal skills, making sure that you've got the people skills, you can say thank you. More importantly, when you're representing their firm or that person, that you'll do it with the best of your ability.
Yeah.
And more importantly, you know how to handle yourself with people. And as I said, people skills will get you through life every day of the week.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. What do people usually expect? So have you ever been to an interview, a formal interview before?
Yeah, many times.
Yeah. And some experiences that you have had that you could give people advice on when going for an interview?
Any interview is daunting. No one likes them. The process, if you've met anyone that likes the process of an interview, as I said, they're better than me. Because at the same time, you're trying to sell your best traits.
Yeah.
And that's the key. Confidence breeds confidence.
Yeah.
You have to understand your strengths and weaknesses. And we have to face it, we do have weaknesses, but you've got to work on your strengths and go in there confident, sell your best attributes, and more importantly, give 100%, because you've got to remember, you're selling your parents who brought you up, your teachers, but more importantly, have pride in yourself.
Yeah. Have you had any bad experiences with interviews?
A few when I didn't get the job,
Yeah.
but generally I was pretty happy with the way the interview went. Sometimes, even though that I thought I answered all the questions very well, and even to this day I have, someone probably answered a question a little bit better or elaborated better than I did.
Yeah.
And that's why they got the job.
And for people that are nervous when going for an interview, do you have any tips on how they could handle that nervousness or that butterfly feeling they get in their stomach?
I use the mirror. I like to look in the mirror, go over my resume, go over possible questions, a couple of scenarios. I like to read up on say for example, if it's at a school, read the school plan, understand what the school is about. All schools are different. We're very similar in some ways, but for example, Liverpool Boys with project-based learning is so different to other schools, even though that they may do some part of it.
Yeah.
But as I said, every school has a unique innovation idea, and more importantly, you've got to go in there and sell that school, but with your best attributes.
When going for an interview, what are some don'ts? So like things that you wouldn't normally do, what are the few of those?
Well, make sure that you're very polite. Yes, no, it always works well. But more importantly, make sure that your grammar's well.
Yeah.
It's never nah, yeah, it's yes and no.
Yeah.
The basic things, as I said, grammar speaks volumes, but more importantly, if you walk in there and you've got confidence and you speak well and you've got the people skills, they will teach you the rest.
Yeah.
As I said, if you come from a good family and your mindset's right, and it's in the right spot, your heart, as I said, you'll go very well in any profession.
Yeah. And when going for an interview, what are a few things people can do to prepare for those interviews? Like any documents they may need or things they might need to be prepared for?
Well, obviously, going for any job, your resume is the key. You've got to make sure your CV's got all the right tools, the resources, all the information that you require. So you want interests, you want strengths, but more importantly, any kind of certificates that you've got. Could be first aid, could be bronze medallion, pool lifeguards, any kind of things you picked up along the way at school, SRC, peer mentor. Add all these areas in there, all the sporting things that you've done, all the co-curricular activities that you've done. As I said, that sells volumes to the employer that you are a doer, but more importantly, you're not lazy.
Yeah. So that's about it. Thank you for coming on the show. Do you have any more advice for people that are going for interview? What are a few extra personal tips that you use when going for an interview?
Practice makes perfect. So have a few mock interviews with people that you know. As I said, it's very difficult, the interview process.
Yeah.
But the more you do, you get comfortable with them. It's never a relaxed environment. As I said, no one likes it. And more importantly, the system of interview, as I said, they're very daunting. You've got 30 or 40 minutes to sell yourself. And you probably have to answer a handful of questions. And it is very, very difficult. But it does get easier the more you do.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on the show, Adam Reid, today. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back after the break on my take on interviews. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. That was our interview with Adam Reid about interviewing, a person who has had many interviews and who has been to many interviews over his career and his lifetime so far. So now it's my take on interviews. When I am interviewed, I get really nervous, as Mr. Reid said. Interviews are a very daunting thing. Not everyone loves interviews and not everyone can cope with that nervousness of going for an interview. So before an interview, like Mr. Reid said, I like to run over my lines, whatever I need to say. And a few days before that, I make sure that I'm prepared and that I have everything that I need. And sometimes I do forget things, but I find a way to avoid them, or I find something that I could show instead of showing that certain thing that I may have forgotten. When going for an interview, it's good to make sure that you're dressed nicely so that you don't smell, have a shower, be fully prepared. So take a week to prepare. If you're one of those people who get really nervous, take a week to prepare. Ask people that interview other people. Ask people around who have been to interviews, any tips that you can get from people, any heads up that you may receive. Ask your parents, your mum, your dad, your friends, your uncles and your aunties, your grandparents, because they probably would have done a lot of interviews over their time. So just ask. It's always a good thing to ask questions. No question is a stupid or wrong question, but you can come off rude in some questions, so just make sure that you're wording the questions politely as you can. And as Mr. Reid said, use formal language, not like, yeah, nah, this and that kind of language. Use more professional language like yes and no and I did this, and then explain this thing. So like use that professional language that you would use at school or out in public with people high up in the society. So yeah, when going for an interview, make sure you're dressed nicely and you don't smell. Number 2, make sure you're prepared. So you have all the documents, all the qualifications, on all the evidence that you need to prove that you're qualified for that position or if you're ready for that interview. And 3, make sure that you run over your lines and make sure you have all the questions you want to ask and make sure that you're kind of prepared. And 4, make sure you try to enjoy your interview and try to be relaxed, because that's another thing they look at, is how you handle with your anxiety and how you handle with all of that pressure. I know that from a personal experience. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning into that episode. Next episode is episode 4, Appeal. What do you need to look like for your interview? We will have an interview with Miss Michelle Aboud, and she will take us over what we need to do for our interview first day and pretty much every day of going through the job. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully this was an educating podcast for you.